This is the UK Brand Show with Penny Williams and Mark Challoner.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, Penny.
Hi, Mark. Happy 2021.
Happy 2021 indeed, yes. It seems a long time since we were last on there.
Well, I don't know. Every day's blending into another, isn't it? With lockdowns coming and going, and I'm getting Zoom neck. That's the other thing, Zoom neck.
Zoom neck, yeah. It's funny, one of the phrases, they did this I think we saw this at the London fireworks. They did some fireworks still, didn't they, in London?
Yes.
On New Year's Eve.
Yes.
Over the O2. And they had lots of drones making these.
Oh, it's amazing. Do you know how much that sort of performance? I mean, it's like $500,000.
Yeah. But there were like several hundred drones all in formation making these things. And one of them was like one of the phrases of 2020, which was, "You're on mute."
You're on mute. Oh, it's so true, though. It still happens. We've all been using Zoom for so long, but I was doing a call this morning and this girl started talking. Everyone's, "You're on mute." It is just a different world, different way of working, which is sort of what we're going to talk about today, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So today I was going to talk about leadership and transformation, digital transformation, which is going to be very important to anyone listening in terms of the latest thinking on it. So
fast moving.
So I've been doing a masterclass. I've been sort of sourcing and hosting a masterclass for my association, INMAR, which I'm in the middle of at the moment. And I did the first week last week, which was all about leadership. So I was going to talk through everyone with some of the stuff we've been doing in that space.
What does
really interesting.
INMAR stand for those that don't know?
Sorry, I should have said, shouldn't I? So it's the International News Media Association.
Well, you're connected to people all over the world, aren't you?
Yeah, it is. Well, the best thing to do, let me just share my screen. It's probably the best thing. Another phrase of 2020. Yeah. You're on mute and I'll share my screen.
Share my screen.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, exactly right. So let me just put this into...
Apparently people have been sending pointers to the government to help them click onto the next slide.
Oh, really? Oh, yes. Next slide, please. Yeah. All they need is a little handheld clicker, isn't it, or something?
I think people have been sending them in to say, why don't you use one of these?
No. So what I've been doing is this thing here. So I've been putting together this leadership and transformation opportunity, and it's meant to be a CEO level playbook for digital transformation and leadership in the future, and what it should be and what it should look like, and the things that we should be focusing on as leaders in whatever industry. So this is for media, but it's the same rules, practically anywhere. So this is what just thing you mentioned, what is INMAR? This is what it is. It's the International News Media Association. And it's really all the world's top media companies. So you can see there's over 16,000 members of like very senior execs, middle management up to CEO level, who that you can see there from literally all over.
And the world has become smaller, hasn't it, really? Almost been accelerated by COVID.
Yeah, it has. I do think that, the whole COVID thing, I mean, everyone's sort of saying, I don't need to go to work anymore, blah, blah, blah. I can do it from home. But there will come a point, because I've been working for myself for quite a while, and it does come a point where you need that interaction. You need that,
Yeah, well, that's one of the...
Like us, I miss seeing you in the studio.
No, I think we all need human contact. And I think that's what's been debated. I did quite a bit of reading at the weekend about... this sort of hybrid model. There was a expectation that people would work more from home going forward because of technology, but actually it has been accelerated by COVID. But how much it will pull back again is uncertain, because a hybrid model seems to be likely, where people will still work from home because it's efficient, but they will come into the office to have that sort of team engagement again.
Yeah. So this masterclass I've been doing, you can see on the screen there all the various sort of subjects that we're trying to cover, from leadership and transformation to impact the technology, things like bots and algorithms and data, and how do we measure them, and what we should be concerned about, and how important will, importantly, be getting the right people in the future. You know, working from home, is this a long-term thing? Is this a new normal? And, you know, how do we bring in things like diversity and inclusion and all that sort of stuff, which are sort of very much bang on trend, I guess. So the first week is gone, as I say, last week. And one of the major things we looked at was this, was what is leadership in 2020 and beyond? Bearing in mind, you know, this evolving landscape and the fact that, you know, hopefully soon when vaccine kicks in, it will be an era we can talk about being post-COVID. So what should leadership look like in that new world? And one of the people I had to speak was a lady, you can see her name on the screen there, Lucy Kung, who's a professor and senior fellow at Reuters Institute in Oxford. And well, she's based in Switzerland, actually. But she's written this book. And if anybody listening in wants a copy, if you take a screen grab of this now, you can put that URL in and get a free download of the book. It's called Hearts and Minds, Harnessing Leadership, Culture and Talent to Really Go Digital. And it's brilliant. And it talks in very simple, plain English of what we need to do. And some of the things I'm just going to mention here, which is what she talked about in the masterclass. So she started off by saying, you know, a quote really, you can have real leadership at the top saying, we want to change. And you can have lots of young people coming at the bottom saying, we get digital. And then there's what she calls a stodgy bit in the middle. And it's true, isn't it? I think that you do see this. Lots of young kids coming in who are, you know, mustered on social media, on digital and transformation themselves in their own way. And you've got CEOs saying, well, I really want to make a big difference and make some change. And there is this bit in the middle where, have you got the right people at the top table? Have you got the right, you know, communications in place? Have you got the right structure in place for people to prosper? So anyway, that was the start of the 10. And what she talked about was a crisis, really, which is on top of, you know, major structural shifts, which are affecting our business. So the triangle there is our business today, in whatever industry you're in. There are three big factors which are influencing your culture at the moment. One of them is digital, of course, so we all try and go digital. The other one's COVID and what our response to it and how we deal with it, whether it's through our staff or what technology we use to get through it. And the Gen Y and Gen Z, the younger people coming through, who very often, and COVID has taught us this, that they are more aware of things like diversity and inclusion, even down to, you know, the things like the Trump era and stuff has changed people's thoughts about how we should treat people. Should we be more kinder to people going forward? Should we show humility in our workplace? Different values, perhaps, of a Gen Y and Gen Z audience that you wouldn't have necessarily got from an older one. So these are all influencing factors in our business today. And what she said was the caliber of leadership will determine how well you master every one of those. So you've got to get the right structure, the right people at the top in place to be able to lead. So leadership challenges differ massively by the different levels within the organization. So at the top, you've got the CEO, and that role is, you know, very complex, and they need to be able to portray this broader profile, which doesn't really necessarily get them involved in the nitty-gritty, but it does to a certain point. I'll come back to that later. You'll see what I mean. But they have to have ultimately the broader picture of where the company should be going. Then they've got this top team, and you know what do you do with the leaders there in terms of, you know, the people that do get it and don't get it. Media is a good example, actually, because, you know, newspapers have gone from traditional just print to print plus digital, and in some cases just moving towards just digital. So there will be some people in there, have been some people in that mix, who really don't get digital and really don't want to get digital. And that's fine. That's not a criticism. That's just the way they're built. They're not interested. They're not, you know, count me out type of thing. But what do you do with those people? You know, and the reality is you probably need to ship them out. But how do you do that? And how do you get the right people who are in that top team? So that top team needs to be cohesive. It needs to be very high performing. Getting those right seats at the top table is really crucial to getting the right people in those right places. And we'll come to what those places are in a minute. Then you've got the mid-tier, and serious leadership skills are needed here too. How do they turn what's given to them as strategy into action? And they're really responsive to things like feedback and performance management, and they need to know they're doing well, and they have a clear path up to the top, and they can see they can get to those top seats and top tables on the board if they're allowed to. I saw a great idea. I think we've mentioned this before, actually, which I think Lucy mentioned, that there's one media company, I think it's in Scandinavia. It is in Scandinavia, called Dagens Nyheter. And what they do is a brilliant idea. In that mid-tier, they have a shadow board, and they're all made up of mid to lower tier, mainly younger people who have mirror roles of the people on the main board. And the chairman of that mirror board sits on the main board. So the main board always hear what the younger upcoming professionals are thinking in their company. I think it's a really, really good idea, isn't it, to get people promoted and get the right people in the right seats. So, and here, it's this thing question on the right-hand side there, what do you do with C-suite ready talent when there are no seats for at the top table? So how do you keep them motivated? That's all really important. And that's why you need to put a bigger emphasis on HR these days, and we'll do more and more. And then finally, at the lower tier, obviously more numerous. And this is where mainly a lot of the Gen Y and Gen Z, the younger people, are coming in. And they are demanding, as we said in the previous slide, different management styles and different leadership styles in terms of their requirements and what they want from it. It's a whole new world. I learned that when I took the media trip out to Silicon Valley, and we went to Facebook and Google and Yahoo News and all the rest of them, and all the young people are employing there. And I was told by Google there that their shelf life, if that's the right words, of an employee at Google head office is 18 months. And they either get shipped on, or they get fed up and leave themselves anyway and move on to the world. They think that's how work is. Whereas, you don't get people these days, and I've been there for 40 years. That doesn't happen in their world. So they do demand a different way of working. They're used to being given, so in that particular scenario in Silicon Valley, when we went to Facebook, the campus of Facebook was deserted. And I said to the guy, where is everyone? And it turns out what they do is they give you, the leaders give them their work, if you like, which they have to complete by a certain time frame in the future, maybe a month or 3 months from now. And it doesn't matter whether you spend all week in here or just spend an hour in here this week, as long as you get to that deadline in 3 months' time or a month's time, whatever, and you produce the work that's required of you, it doesn't matter. You can be here at 2 o'clock in the morning if you want and work from that, but it's up to you. You go up, you're empowered to do your own thing. So they do require different management styles as the point, and different leadership because of that. How do we cope with that going forward? So the whole thing is very different, and leadership challenges do differ hugely by what level you're in the company. And what's also come into play now is a sort of yin and yang thing as well. So the formula at the very top has to be, in terms of going forward, very high thinking, but low ego. Yeah. And what that means is you've got an intelligence, this intelligence quotient, your IQ, your expertise, and what you really know about your subject. That's why you're in that position at the top. But you've got to be able to give strategic clarity in this midst of uncertainty. And the communication challenge there is, right, here is the strategy. Me and my board have come up with this for you guys in the mid and lower tiers. These are the priorities, but we could be wrong. And that's a big shift in itself. It's not saying, this is it, we're right, we're going to do it. It's being open and transparent to say, this is the strategy. We think these are the priorities, but we could be wrong. So you need to have flexibility to be able to say, look, if an opportunity comes up, we can jump on it and move the priorities if we have to. So the organization at the top needs to be a lot more flexible than it perhaps once was. And on the other side of the brain, if you like, you've got this EQ, this empathy. It's all about accessibility. It's accepting there's vulnerability in what we do and some of the people and how they work, and what are we doing to try and counter that. And how do we, again, on the subject of transparency, give people the opportunity to see that they can trust us? What do they do? So that's where you need empathy, and the need for that is amplified by COVID. Yeah, it certainly is, isn't it? You know, people have changed the way they think about things, and a lot more humility comes in. And remember that word humility, because it comes in at the end. It's a really good word to focus on. So I'll come back to that humility. So the thing was, you know, what are our leadership principles? Yeah, it's trust is a challenge, but you know that's it. Once you've got the trust, you're on your way. And she gave this great quote to speaking, Lucy, who said, "I have a small group of highly capable managers." This is from one of her clients she's been working with. "I have a small group of highly capable managers whose brief is to empower, to train, and to develop individuals. They operate on the basis of being entrusted, of being the experts. I give them the confidence to succeed as the CEO, this is, but also space to fail without fear. The people I got rid of were command and do types. You will do that. That's what, you know, I want that done that way. And the people I installed instead were very much collaborators. And collaboration seemed to be a big key word at all levels going forward." So she said, who needs them, therefore, to be at that top table? And in a typical organization, you need your leader, your CEO, you need a chief technical officer, you need, talking the dark blue world, a top business role. That could be you know, who gets your advertising in, your top commercial role, if you like, a top content person who can tell you what the website should have on it, what we should be giving people, whether it's in a newspaper or whatever it might be. Who's the content person? Maybe it's the editor. And a chief financial officer. So they're the core. But what's changing and who needs to be at the top table going forward are a new supercharged HR role, which is very strategic, but it's very much in line with the CEO. And this is where things like, you know, your diversity, your inclusion, you know, women in leadership, Black Lives Matter, all this sort of stuff comes into play. You know, things that weren't on the agenda, 18 months ago?
Yeah.
But COVID has accelerated all of this. And then the other side, you need a good product person and you need a good data person. And those two people, the product person decides on what things you should be churning out as your product range. And it's a continuous process to develop it and change it and accelerate what you need to be doing with it. This continuous cycle of improvement. How do you change the product? How do you make it new or improved, or how do you keep adding to it to keep your product lines fresh? And the data person is a person who's getting closer to your customers and making sure that the product person has got the stuff to make sure he develops product, which then goes to the content person, product which people want. So the data will inform us of that. So it's all about extracting data, manipulating data, and then exploiting data to our benefit. And what she was saying was that these new roles don't absolve anyone else from dealing with digital. Doesn't mean because they're digital, you know, hounds that they're the only ones to touch you. Everyone should be clear of what the whole company is about and what the priorities are. And one of the final things she said on this is that you'll find that the impact of the content person will probably decline as those technology and digital roles grow. I found that when I was at the Mirror newspaper, we used to have managing directors and editors for every single newspaper around the country. And what happened over time, they were all squeezed to become more sort of regional or you know, because the role of the content people who decide on the content became less so as the more you develop the product and the data roles.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, don't you think? So Sue's saying there were two things, tactically and strategically. Tactically, the leadership priorities, excuse me, are all about now having a clear story which is grounded in the present day. For example, what 3 goals have to happen and what's on the back burner. So don't get bogged down with that. We've got a million priorities. What are the top 3 that you need to worry about that you can make a difference with?
Yeah.
And what are those on the back burner? And tackle the busyness. Everyone's very busy. Everyone's got work in progress. Don't get people overloaded, therefore. Get them concentrating on the things that matter, and have fewer, therefore, hard deadlines, and have the capacity to jump on new opportunities when they emerge. Second thing was realism, and it's got to be bounded in optimism. You don't want people going, that won't work, or, and I've seen that myself, and you must have seen that. People just going, I'm not really interested in it.
We've tried that before and it didn't work, because sometimes even adopting digital, there's ideas that you might have done in other forms, but you can reinvent it, can't you? Look at music artists, how they reinvent themselves all the time. It's the same with product development or your business development. Just because it didn't work last time doesn't mean it's necessarily not going to work this time.
Yeah. And COVID's had to make us change, hasn't it? So that's realism for the present.
And we don't know where all the consumers are going to end up, really, because we're all in that boat, aren't we? Of our habits have changed. How much, what is normal? I was on a seminar the other day, and it said, it's not about the new normal. It's about how normal is going to change going forwards. So it's sort of having a lot of the things that happened before, but it's going to be different this time.
Yeah. So you've got to make sure you get the right people in place to do this. And that's where, the hard decisions may have to come some points. You need to ship some people out if they don't get it or don't want to get it.
Yeah.
You're going to have regular check-ins. Again, just talking tactically for a minute, regular check-ins, and listen to what people are saying. What's the chatter in the company? How are people doing? And what degree of change are they open to right now? How can you shape their future and keep them interested, keep them developing, keep them progressing within the company and feel they have a valuable part to play? And finally, double down on leadership messaging. So overdo it, she was saying. Remember, you're never not signaling what's going on. So what everyone's looking to you for leadership. What are we doing? Where are we going? What's the priorities? What's the messaging that I should be picking up from you as a leader? And prepare the messages really carefully, therefore, and be transparent in the communications. Avoid abrupt announcements on big issues. Let people know. I thought of the government when she said this. Avoid abrupt announcements on big issues. They avoid abrupt issues by leaking it to the press first. So when you hear it,
it's so true. You can see it rolling out, can't you?
You can. And then final 3 points, which is more the strategic bit, is it all starts with leadership. So mastering digital transformation and dealing with COVID has been really, really crucial. And we need to think and realize it does all start with good leaders. And leadership needs, you got to remember, at different levels. As we said, those different tiers. So at the top, it's all about sharp analysis, maybe some difficult decisions in there, but the payoff's going to be big. In the middle, it's about coaching, performance management, support. The brunt of remote working stress and organizational change is felt in this particular layer or layers. And getting this right will be transformational for the culture of the company. And then finally, at the lower levels, it's all about including and listening and creating opportunities that people can give their ideas and don't feel frightened of doing so. And if you fail fast and move on. You don't look for a scapegoat, but it'll lead to growth and impact. And the final thing she was saying was, you've got to audit your leadership. It's really important that you've got to keep a check on, you have your own parameters within your own culture. What is it that you can do to make sure that your leadership is having an effect? So all the things at the various levels, can you go back to those and check that people are responding to them? What's the feedback from the company? Are they getting it? Are they with you on the journey? All those things are auditing what you're trying to do at the top. Is it strong enough at every level to achieve what you need? And she said, if you invest anywhere, this is the area we should be investing in. Leadership, because if everyone's with you, you're on a successful team path. And as part of all of this, I didn't mention this in the masterclass. I read this since, and I just thought it was relevant. I read this piece about, in 1989, there was a consultant called Sidney Yoshida, and he produced a study called The Iceberg of Indifference, which is a great title. And what he was doing was he was looking at the work and leadership habits of a Japanese car manufacturer called Calsonic. And he uncovered that the knowledge of frontline problems at the lower level, if you like, went up in smoke the higher they climbed the management chain. So he found that the company leadership was hardly aware of any of the real problems the organization faced. So as he put it, they were only aware of the tip of the iceberg, this iceberg of ignorance. And he found that although 100% of the frontline manufacturing problems were known to all the frontline employees, as you went through the tiers, as we mentioned on those slides earlier, it changed dramatically. So only 74% were known to the team leaders of the problems that existed. Only 9% were known to middle management, and only 4% were known to the top management. So this iceberg of indifference offers a really sort of powerful but painful insight into the miserable state of many modern workforces. So what can leaders do to address the problem? And the key word is this: humility.
Humility. You said you were going to come back to it.
Yeah. So it's the key to melting the iceberg. And there's a Harvard Business School professor called Francesca Gino, who recently talked about a research project where she surveyed 700 employees about their bosses and their behavior. And she found managers with the least levels of respect were also known for shutting themselves away in their office and closing the door. But even more importantly, she also found that the most respected leaders were the ones that were willing to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
So she talked about the work and leadership habits of someone called Massimo Bottura. And Massimo Bottura is the chef and owner of an Italian 3-star Michelin star restaurant called Osteria Francescana. And Osteria is ranked as one of the best restaurants in the world, but its chef owner doesn't shy away from sweeping the street in front of the restaurant every single morning. And moreover, he helps his staff to unload delivery trucks, prepare staff meals, and he even finds time to play football with the staff.
Yeah.
When Bottura grabs a broom each morning, he's showing his staff there is no work that's beneath him, and he gains their respect. So it's all about doing the small things to ensure the business runs smoothly, no matter what the position or role you hold. Humility is the hidden ingredient and the cement that holds it all together. So she said, and this lady, a consultant said, a professor said, creating a culture of humility is not just about recruiting a bunch of humble people. It's about making humility a core part of all our practices, our roles, and our processes. And we can increase the ownership, the autonomy, the responsibility of others to encourage them to think for themselves and try out their own ideas by doing so. And I thought it was so good that it just summed it up in a nutshell.
Yeah, just love it. That's great.
Yeah. So that's the, if anyone missed it before, that's the free download of the book. So you can get Lucy's book on the whole management leadership thing, which is brilliant. I've seen it, I've read it, it's great. And this week, I said it was part one of my masterclass, and that was just part of the whole masterclass last week. We looked inside the New York Times and what they're doing about digital transformation. And we had the biggest media company in Brazil talking about new revenue streams and diversification of revenue, doing new things, even things like linking with universities outside the company and doing master's degrees for readers of newspapers there, and really, really good stuff. Anyway, this week will all be about the impact of technology and how we use technology to lead the transformation and how it will all affect corporate culture. So I'm not going to get into that today, apart from just one little thing, which I think is perhaps worth sharing. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it then. I thought you were going, no. It's actually a place called Knaresborough. So I've been living up in Harrogate for the past 3 months during the winter, and this place is just outside Harrogate. It's about 3 miles outside Harrogate. It's a beautiful little place. It's got a great viaduct. And it's famous, not just for the viaduct, but it's famous for this too. You may not know what that is, but it's Mother Shipton's cave. And have you ever heard of Mother Shipton? She otherwise was known as Ursula Southill. She was around in the 15th century, but she's England's most famous prophetess in as much as she lived in this cave, and she was allegedly foretold the fates of several local leaders You need to read all the stuff on this, but just for now, I'll just give the headline. And she supposedly predicted the invention of iron ships, the Great Fire of London in 1666, and the defeat of the Spanish Armada. I won't even start getting into that now, but this is the thing found on that. So it just made me think, having seen this recently, it reminded me of this guy here, who is a sort of modern day prophet as well in many ways. So he was a former director of engineering at Google, Ray Kurzweil, and he's an inventor and entrepreneur. And he did a book, his own book on predictions himself. And he describes a point in times where humans and machines will fully merge. And there's, again, we've no time to go into that today, but he gives a specific date for this to happen, 2045, that he reckons that humans will be a subspecies of machines. Anything that will be automated will, and we'll be scratching for jobs in many cases on top of all of this as a subculture almost. He says there's an earlier milestone in 2029 where he expects computers to possess human-level general intelligence. Now, if he sounds a bit of a crank, what you should bear in mind is what he's done already. So in 1990, he predicted the following. He predicted a computer would win the World Chess Championship in 1998, which it did. It happened in 1997, in fact. The Deep Blue supercomputer beat Garry Kasparov.
Gosh.
He said in 2010, personal computer will be able to answer user questions by wireless access internet in 2010. Well, it's now reality, of course. He said in the early 2000s, exoskeletons would allow disabled people to walk. Well, companies such as Exobionics and others are now creating and testing exoskeletons and bionic prostheses for people to limbs, for people to walk on, etc. And I've seen these myself. In 1999, he predicted the following, that people will be able to give voice commands to the computer by 2009. Well,
Yep.
by 2009, virtual assistants like Google now, Siri, were all emerging, but now they're in millions of devices. In 2009, computer displays will become part of glasses, creating an augmented reality. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? We got the Google Glass. Now, that people say, oh, that was a failure in 2011. Well, it wasn't. It was just the first iteration of using things like augmented reality. The technology is still there. They're just using it in different things now.
Yeah.
And maybe it just wasn't the right time, right place for the glasses. And in 2005, he said that by 2010, virtual solutions will allow real-time language translations when words in a foreign language will be translated into text in another language. And of course, that all happened. We've got Skype Translate, Google Translate, and other companies have already implemented it. I've just had, since I've upgraded my iPhone with the new software, I've got a new Translate app, which is really clever. You can just go to any part of the world and speak into the phone if you're in Spain, and it'll give you it'll reproduce it for you in Spanish straight away for the person sitting opposite you, in case you don't know.
Amazing.
So this is not a crank.
No.
So it is an interesting scenario. So this week we'll be talking about using technology to drive transformation, and I'll be interested to just question some of our speakers. I've got the BBC on there, in fact, and they're going to show some about how storytelling in the future is going to change based on new technologies, whether that's visual storytelling and data manipulation and 5G and things like this. So we may get back to that another day, Pen.
Yeah, very interesting.
And I'll leave it with a final slide is a good friend of mine, a guy called Mike Orloff, who listens to the show. Hi, Mike, if you're listening today. He gave me this slide, which he used to be a management consultant out in the Middle East and ran a company called Stepping Stone there. And he gave me this slide, which is a guy called Peter Drucker, who's an Austrian management consultant and author, and his writings contributed, you'll have heard the name, contributed to the foundations of modern business. And he quite simply said this: the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it is to act with yesterday's logic. It's so true, isn't it? Because there's so much in that statement, I think, that, in essence, therefore, we need to think differently. We need to act differently. We need to bring the right people in who can think differently. it's all about making a difference with the right processes, right people. People will still be important, I believe. That's why I think the Ray Kurzweil thing is an interesting one. I think people and opinions and leadership, it may well be automated to some extent going forward another 20 odd years or so, but I think there'll still be a role for human interaction and human leadership in all of this.
Definitely, because COVID has taught us that human interaction is actually really important. We're all missing it.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see actually how much of the local shops, etc., actually have a resurgence, because people are starting to shy away from supermarkets, not wanting to catch COVID.
Yeah.
And I think farm shops and small villages have actually done reasonably well out of
But the one thing I would say about technology is that you can see how things change quite quickly. I mean, all the predictions that Ray mentioned all came true quicker than he anticipated, and people at the time thought he was stupid. Look what happened. And little things which we've talked about on this show, how quickly COVID again has been the factor, how quickly people have started using their phones to tap things, to buy things, because contactless payments, all the rest of it, even just with a card.
It's accelerated. I think I heard someone speaking saying that the COVID has accelerated sort of technology adoption by about 5 years.
Yeah.
I can believe.
So I do believe, and I've said this for many years myself, that I used to present a lot to advertising agencies. I used to say to them when I talked about mobile coming and how it's going to be big, and I said back about 10 years ago, I used to say some of the stuff out there looks quite scary. And I think you're either in the camp of, I'm scared, what the do I do about it? Or I'm excited by it.
Yeah.
I'm excited by it. I know you're excited by this whole thing.
Very much.
But some people aren't, and that's fine. It doesn't mean to say you're wrong to not feel excited. But it's just that if you are scared by it, then, and you don't feel like you feel part of this new world, then go and do something else. Go and do something different. Maybe it's just not for you. And that's where I think a lot of media companies have got to, that they've got people in certain middle tiers, as Lucy was saying from Reuters, where perhaps you need to ship them out, that they're just perhaps not there for the long term, for no fault of their own. It's just the world's changed, and they either can't change mentally, physically, or they don't want to change. And that's absolutely fine. It's just that we need people, the right people at the top table now, who are thinking differently.
Yeah.
You think, what was that quote from Peter Drucker again? You've got to, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it's to act with yesterday's logic, and we can't do that anymore.
Oh, it's very much, isn't it? I mean, just in life, it's how you approach things. So, bad things always happen. It's how you actually react to them or approach them that makes the difference in the end. And it's the same with this. It's how you embrace change and look for the opportunities.
Yeah, that's right.
Take people with you,
Yeah.
So it's all about the people. It always has been about the people. I think the days of telling people what to do rather than motivating them to do the wrong thing died in the 80s, as far as I was concerned. But
I think there's still a lot, isn't there, today? The reason why, that's absolutely right, and the reason why is because I think not just the 80s, but there's still an element for today whereby older style management people and companies are still making the culture feel that if you give me an idea and it's wrong, well, you better worry, you're going to be out of here. And people think that way. I've seen it happen in media. People are fighting to put their head above the parapet in case they get shot down, and therefore stifles new ideas coming through. So we've got to change all of that. We do.
Well, that was brilliant.
So there we go.
So look forward to the next instalment, Mark.
Yeah, so I'll tell you all about how important bots and the algorithms are.
Yes.
They always say with social media platforms, you need to go into the relationship, whether you're a business or a consumer, with eyes open, because when they change the algorithm, it can change so many things that you really don't actually anticipate or were aware of sometimes. So anyway. So that's it, Pen, for this week, I think.
Well, great to see you, Mark, and thanks for that. That was really interesting. So you can follow more of our talks and information on the ukbrandshow.co.uk. Follow us on Twitter at the UK Brand Show, and indeed on Facebook as well.
And we'll be back very soon with more of the same, or even some new guests as well. So we're lining up some new guests for this year. And we've got some really good ones lined up as well. So we'll tell everybody about those in the next week or two.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. See you soon, Pen. Bye, everyone. Bye now.